"You've always put yourself first, Mom." That's what my son said to me when I told him I couldn't co-sign another loan. After 31 years of putting him first, of putting everyone first, apparently, the one time I said no was proof that I'd been selfish all along. That single sentence undid something in me that I don't think will ever go back together. My name is Evelyn. I'm 67 years old. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house in Savannah, Georgia. The one with the magnolia tree out front and the wraparound porch that needs repainting every other spring. My husband, Gerald, passed 8 years ago, and since then I've been the kind of woman people describe as doing well, all things considered. I volunteer at the food bank on Tuesdays. I keep my garden alive. I pay my bills on time, and I don't bother anyone. But I suppose that was the problem. I never bothered anyone. I just gave. It started with a phone call on a Wednesday evening. I was standing at the stove, warming up leftover soup, when my son Derek's name popped up on the screen. He never called on weekdays unless something was wrong, or unless he needed something. Those two things had become the same over the years. "Hey, Mom. Quick question. No, hello. No, how are you? Just straight to it. Tasha and I found a house. Bigger yard, better school district for the kids. But we need a co-signer for the mortgage. The bank flagged our debt-to-income ratio." I stirred the soup slowly. "How much is the mortgage?" $320. "But don't worry, you wouldn't actually be paying anything. It's just your name on the paperwork. Just my name. Just my credit. Just my financial future tied to a house I'd never sleep in." I took a breath and told him the truth. I said I couldn't do it. I explained that I was still listed as a co-signer on their current auto loan, that my financial advisor had warned me about overextending, and that at my age, I needed to protect what I had left. I said it gently. I said it with love. I even apologized, which I shouldn't have. But old habits are hard to break. The silence that followed was so thick, I could hear the clock ticking in his kitchen across town. "Wow," he said. "You've always put yourself first, Mom." I guess I just never wanted to believe it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. 31 years of evidence to the contrary sat in my throat like a stone. The $18,000 I gave them for their first apartment when Derek lost his job at the dealership. The $6,500 for Tasha's emergency dental work the year their insurance lapsed. The 2 years I watched their daughter Chloe 5 days a week, unpaid, so they could save on daycare. The Christmas I spent $2,300 on gifts for their kids because Tasha said Chloe's friends all had tablets and she'd be the only one without. I didn't say any of that. I just said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." He hung up. The next morning, I woke to a text from Tasha. It was long and written in that careful, composed tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable while saying something cruel. "Evelyn, Derek is really hurt. We've been counting on this, and honestly, we thought family was supposed to be there for each other. We need some space to process this. Please don't come by the house for a while. We'll reach out when we're ready." Don't come by the house. The house where I'd spent every Sunday dinner for 6 years. The house where Chloe's growth chart was penciled on the laundry room door frame. The house where I kept a spare pair of reading glasses in the junk drawer because I was there so often. I read the message 3 times. Then I set my phone on the counter and watched a cardinal land on the bird feeder outside the window. It pecked twice and flew away. I didn't cry. Not then. The tears came later, at night, in the dark, when I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. 4 days passed without a word from either of them. On Sunday, the day I usually drove over with a casserole and stayed to read Chloe her bedtime story, I sat in my living room instead. The casserole dish sat clean and empty on the counter. I hadn't made anything. There was no point. By Wednesday, I started going through the house the way you do when something inside you shifts and you need your surroundings to match. I opened the hallway closet and found a bin of things I'd been storing for them. Chloe's baby blankets, Marcus's old soccer trophies, a box of Tasha's college textbooks she said she'd pick up eventually. 5 years they'd been sitting there. I closed the lid and pushed the bin to the back wall. Then I sat down at the dining room table with a cup of tea I didn't drink and opened the drawer where I kept my files. I'm a retired bookkeeper. I record everything, not because I'm petty, but because numbers are the one language that never lies. I pulled out the folder labeled Derek and Tasha. Inside were bank statements, printed transfer confirmations, handwritten notes, every dollar I'd ever sent them, dated and documented, not because I planned to use it against them, but because that's who I am. I track things. It's how I make sense of the world. The first entry was from 12 years ago. $3,000 to cover their security deposit when they moved to Savannah from Augusta. Derek had called me crying, actually crying, said they had nowhere to go, that the landlord wouldn't budge. I wired it that same afternoon. Then came the others. A rhythm of emergencies that never quite stopped. $1,200 for a car repair, $900 for Marcus's school trip that Tasha said he'd be devastated to miss, $4,800 to cover 2 months of rent when Derek got laid off again, a new water heater, a new dryer, groceries, gas money, birthday parties, back-to-school clothes. I counted them. 87 transfers in 12 years. I added the total on a notepad with a pencil, the way I always did. The number stared back at me like a confession. $94,600, almost $95,000. And not once, not a single time, had they offered to pay any of it back. Not once had they even acknowledged the amount. It was always just this once, and we'll get back on our feet soon, and thanks, Mom, you're a lifesaver. I set the pencil down and stared at the wall. The framed photo of Derek's high school graduation hung there, slightly crooked. He was smiling, holding his diploma, and I was beside him, beaming like I'd won something. I remembered how proud I was, how certain I was that I'd done a good job. Now I wasn't sure what I'd done. The next morning, I called my attorney, Patricia Nguyen. She'd handled Gerald's estate and my retirement trust. Sharp woman, no nonsense. The kind of person who looks at you over her glasses and waits for you to finish before she says anything. I need to make some changes, I told her, to my will, my power of attorney, and a few beneficiary designations. Come in Thursday, she said. Bring everything. I did. I wore my good navy cardigan and the pearl earrings Gerald gave me for our 30th anniversary. Not for Patricia, for me, because I wanted to feel like someone who mattered when she walked into that office. We sat across from each other in her small, tidy office with the fern on the windowsill that somehow always looked perfect. She opened my file and reviewed the existing documents. Your son, Derek, is currently your primary beneficiary across the board, she said. The house, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio, the life insurance. He also holds durable power of attorney. I want all of that changed, I said. She looked at me steadily. All of it? Yes. I told her I wanted to revoke the power of attorney immediately. I told her I wanted to establish a new trust, with my niece, Joanna, as the primary beneficiary. Joanna lived in Vermont. She was a middle school art teacher. She called me every Sunday morning, not because she wanted anything, but because she liked talking to me. She drove down every Thanksgiving with homemade pie and a stack of her students' drawings because she knew I loved seeing what kids could create. She once flew in on 24 hours' notice when I had a bad fall and couldn't get to the pharmacy. Joanna never asked me for money. She never even let me pay for dinner when we went out. You've done enough, Aunt Evelyn, she'd say. Let me do this one thing. Patricia took notes without judgment. When I was done, she said, This is your right, Evelyn. Every bit of it. We worked through the paperwork that afternoon. I signed each page with a steady hand. When I got to the revocation of power of attorney, I paused for just a moment. Not from doubt, from the weight of it, the understanding that I was drawing a line I'd never drawn before. I signed it. If your son attempts to make any financial or medical decisions on your behalf, Patricia said, this document ensures he'll be turned away. Good, I said, and I meant it. The next day, I went to the bank. I sat across from a young man named Daniel, who had kind eyes and a firm handshake. I told him I needed to cancel every recurring transfer to my son's household. He pulled up my account and scrolled through the list. I see monthly transfers to 3 separate accounts associated with your son's family: a grocery stipend, an auto insurance contribution, and a general support payment. You'd like to cancel all of them? Every single one. He looked at me carefully. May I ask the reason? I folded my hands on the desk. Because I've spent 12 years being a safety net, and no one ever thought to ask if I needed one too. He nodded. We'll process it today. I drove home with the windows down. The Spanish moss hung low over the road, swaying in the breeze like it had all the time in the world. And for the first time in months, I felt like I did too. That Friday evening, my phone rang. Derek, I answered. Mom, what's going on with the bank? Tasha says the grocery money didn't come through, and the insurance payment bounced. No greeting, no apology, no mention of the text, just the money. I canceled the transfers, I said. A pause. What do you mean, you canceled them? I mean, I walked into the bank and told them to stop sending money to your accounts. You can't just do that. We depend on that. I know, I said. That's the problem, he sputtered. This is because of the cosign thing? Seriously? You're punishing us? I'm not punishing anyone. Tasha told me not to come by. She told me you needed space. I'm giving you space, including financial space. That's not what she meant, and you know it. Then maybe she should have said what she meant. He went quiet. I could hear Tasha in the background, whispering something sharp. Then he came back, his voice harder. You're going to regret this, Mom. You're pushing away the only family you have. No, I said softly. I'm just no longer pretending that being used is the same as being loved. I hung up before he could respond. My hand was trembling, but my voice had been steady, and that was enough. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A handwritten letter from Tasha. I recognized her loopy cursive on the envelope. I opened it at the kitchen table with a glass of water and a deep breath. It started without a greeting. Evelyn, I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're tearing this family apart. Derek hasn't slept in days. The kids keep asking why Grandma doesn't come over anymore. Do you realize how selfish this looks after everything we've included you in? Every holiday, every birthday, every milestone. You're throwing it all away because we asked for one thing and you said no. Families make sacrifices. That's what love is. If you can't see that, then maybe we were right to ask for distance. At the bottom, she'd added, P.S. Chloe made you a card. I told her I'd mail it, but I'm holding on to it until you come to your senses. She was using my granddaughter as leverage. That was the line. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and set it on the mantel next to the clock. I didn't burn it. I didn't throw it away. I just didn't give it any more of my time. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Something had settled inside me. Not peace exactly, but clarity. The kind that comes when you stop trying to make people love you and start letting yourself be enough. A week passed. I spent it quietly. I repainted the porch railing the pale blue I'd been meaning to for 2 years. I made a peach cobbler from scratch and brought half of it to my neighbor, Ruth Ann, who lived alone and never complained about anything, even when she should. I went back to the library and sat in the reading room for 2 hours, just because I could. On Tuesday, I got a call from the food bank. Margaret, who ran the volunteer schedule, said they were short-staffed and asked if I could come in an extra day. We could really use your hands, Evelyn. Nobody sorts cans like you. I laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. I'll be there Thursday, I said. At the food bank, I met a woman named Dolores. She was 73, tall, white-haired, with a voice like warm gravel. She'd been volunteering for a decade and had a way of saying things that landed somewhere between wisdom and a slap. We were stacking boxes of pasta when she looked at me sideways and said, "You've got that look." What look? The one women get when they've finally stopped apologizing for existing. I almost dropped the box. Is it that obvious? Honey, I wore that same look for about a year after I cut off my youngest. Best year of my life, also the hardest. We didn't say much more that day, but before I left, she squeezed my arm and said, "Whatever you did, don't undo it." I didn't. The voicemail came on a Saturday morning. I was watering the ferns on the back porch when my phone buzzed. I let it go to voicemail and listened later. It was Chloe. "Grandma, it's me. I don't know why you stopped coming over. Daddy says you're being difficult, but I don't think that's true because you're never difficult. You're the nicest person I know. I miss our stories. I miss the cobbler. Can you call me back? I won't tell anyone. I promise." Her voice cracked at the end. She was 9 years old, and she sounded like she was carrying something no child should have to carry. I sat with the phone in my lap for a long time. Then I saved the message. I didn't call back yet. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to be careful. Anything I said could be twisted. Anything I did could be used. Instead, I wrote her a letter. Short, simple, on the lavender stationery she'd given me for my birthday. "Dear Chloe, I love you more than every star in the sky. And that's a lot of stars. I'm not going anywhere. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, and it takes time to sort them out. But you are never, ever the reason. You are the best part of my whole world. I'll see you soon. Love, Grandma." I mailed it the next day. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on my porch with a glass of sweet tea when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A woman stepped out, mid-40s, dark hair, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She walked toward me with a kind of nervous energy, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. It was Tasha's sister, Renee. We'd met at a few family gatherings, exchanged pleasantries, but never really talked. She stood at the bottom of the porch steps and said, "Mrs. Evelyn, I know this is out of the blue, but can I sit with you for a minute?" I gestured to the empty chair. She sat down and clasped her hands together. "I want you to know that I think what they did to you is wrong. Tasha told me everything, her version of it, but I've known my sister long enough to read between the lines. I didn't say anything. I just listened. She told me you refused to help with the house. She told me you cut off the money out of spite. She told me you were being vindictive." Renee paused. "But she also told me how much you've given them over the years, and she said it like it was nothing, like it was just what you were supposed to do, and that made me sick." I looked at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone should. And because Chloe talks about you every time I see her. That little girl loves you, and she doesn't understand why you're gone." My chest tightened. "I'm not gone. I was told to leave." Renee nodded. "I know. And I think they'll regret it. But I didn't come here to speak for them." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of construction paper. "Chloe gave me this, asked me to bring it to you because Tasha wouldn't mail it." I unfolded it slowly. A crayon drawing. A house with a blue porch, a big tree, and 2 stick figures holding hands. One tall with white curly hair, one small with a big smile. At the top, in wobbly purple letters, "Grandma's house is my favorite place." I pressed it to my chest and closed my eyes. Renee stood up quietly. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to have it." After she left, I sat on that porch for a long time, holding the drawing, watching the light fade through the Spanish moss, and I made a decision. I called Patricia the next morning. "I want to add something to the trust," I said. "A separate education fund for my granddaughter Chloe and my grandson Marcus, managed independently from their parents, accessible only when each child turns 18. "That's very doable," Patricia said. "We can structure it so your son has no access or control." That's exactly what I want. They'll know someday that I never stopped loving them. But they'll also know it wasn't their parents who made sure they were taken care of. The paperwork was done by Friday. I didn't hear from Derek for almost 2 months. The longest silence of our entire lives. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. Some mornings I'd wake up and reach for my phone, hoping for a message. Most mornings, there was nothing, but the days filled themselves. I painted watercolors for the first time since college. Terrible ones, but joyful. I started walking 2 miles every morning around Forsyth Park, nodding at the same joggers and dog walkers until we became familiar strangers. I had dinner with Ruth Ann on Fridays. I volunteered 3 days a week. Dolores and I developed a routine of sorting cans and solving the world's problems between boxes of pinto beans and tomato sauce. One afternoon, Dolores said to me, "You know what the hardest part is? It's not losing them. It's realizing you already lost them a long time ago. You just didn't notice because you were too busy giving." I nodded. She was right. Joanna called that weekend. "Aunt Evelyn, I got the paperwork from the attorney. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, sweetheart. But this is your it's everything. And I want it to go to someone who loves me without a price tag." She was quiet for a moment. "Will you come up for Thanksgiving? I'll make the pie. You just bring yourself." "I'll be there," I said, and I meant it. The knock came on a Thursday evening in early October. I was in the kitchen drying dishes when I heard it. 2 soft knocks, almost hesitant. I opened the door. Derek stood on the porch. He looked thinner. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his hands were shoved deep into his jacket pockets. Behind him, in the driveway, Chloe sat in the back seat of the car, her face pressed to the window. "Mom," he said. His voice was different, smaller. I stood in the doorway and waited. "I know I don't deserve to be here," he said. "Tasha doesn't know I came. She thinks I'm at the hardware store." He let out a breath that shook. The house fell through, the one we wanted, and then the car broke down, and then the credit card company called, and I sat in the kitchen last night looking at the pile of bills and I thought, who do I call? And the answer was you. It's always been you. His eyes filled, and I realized I'd been calling you for 12 years, and you always answered. And the one time you didn't, I treated you like you were the enemy. I didn't move. I didn't speak. "I'm not here to ask for money," he said quickly. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what Tasha texted you. I'm sorry I didn't stop it. I'm sorry I said you put yourself first. That's the most untrue thing I've ever said in my life, and I've been living with it every day since." I looked at him. My son, the boy I'd carried, the teenager I'd driven to baseball practice at dawn, the man I'd propped up over and over and over again. "You changed the terms of our entire relationship over a single no," I said quietly. "You let your wife tell me to stay away. You didn't call me for 2 months. You let Chloe think I abandoned her." He winced. "I know. I'm not angry, Derek. I'm just done pretending it didn't happen." He nodded. Tears slid down his cheeks and he didn't wipe them. "I don't know how to fix it," he whispered. "You start by not expecting me to fix it for you," I said. "That's new for both of us." We stood there in the doorway for a long moment. The crickets were loud. The magnolia tree rustled in the evening air. Then I looked past him at the car, at Chloe's small face still pressed against the glass. "Send her in," I said. "I made cobbler this morning." His face crumpled. He nodded, turned, and opened the car door. Chloe burst out like a spring. She ran up the steps and threw her arms around my waist so hard I nearly lost my balance. "Grandma," she said into my stomach. "I knew you didn't forget me." I held her. I held her tight and I breathed in the smell of her strawberry shampoo and I let myself feel it, all of it, the grief, the relief, the love that never left even when everything else did. "I could never forget you," I said. "Not in a million years." She pulled back and looked up at me. "Can we read the Fox story?" "We can read whatever you want." She ran inside, shoes already off, heading straight for the bookshelf like she'd never left. Derek stood on the porch, watching. I looked at him and said, "You can come in. But things are different now." "I know," he said. "I mean it, Derek. I love you. I will always love you. But I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm your mother. There's a difference. And it's time we both learned it." He nodded. Slowly, he stepped inside. I didn't close the door right away. I stood there for a moment, looking out at the street, at the magnolia, at the evening sky turning soft shades of amber and rose. Somewhere down the block, someone was grilling, and the smell drifted over like a memory of easier times. I thought about the woman I was 2 months ago, the one who sat in this same doorway, shaking, wondering if she'd made a mistake, the one who thought love meant never saying no. She was gone now, and in her place stood someone I was just beginning to know, someone who watered her own garden, someone who chose herself not out of selfishness, but out of survival. Someone who finally understood that the most loving thing a mother can do is teach her children that she is a person too. From inside, I heard Chloe's voice, bright and clear. "Grandma, I found it. Come sit with me." I smiled, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me, not to shut anyone out, but to welcome myself home. If this story stirred something in you, I want you to hear this. You are not selfish for having limits. You are not cruel for protecting your peace, and you are never too old to start putting yourself on the list of people you take care of. Leave a comment if you've walked this road. And if you haven't yet, share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories that say the quiet things out loud.